There's obviously a ton of disparity between different skilled players in Warzone. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the real differences and discussing why they exist. We're going to start by watching a video by the Tactical Brit titled "This is what a top 1% Warzone lobby looks like," because I feel a lot of people don't actually recognize the differences of when they're watching a content creator or a pro player and what's going on in their lobbies. So let's get things going.
On this channel, I have shown you guys what the absolute bottom 0% lobby in Warzone looks like, and I did it because it was an interesting insight into the world of people who just play from time to time. Now, I'm going to give you an insight into the world of people who play this game religiously, because this is what a top 1% lobby in Warzone looks like, and the introduction of Warzone Ranked, I'm telling you, has been a sight to behold.
Now, the first thing I kind of want to point out is a few things. One, the telemetry at the top. Off rip, we know that he's on a very high frame rate computer, a very high-end computer, because he's got 209 frames. We know that he's playing in 1440p, because if I'm not wrong, yeah, the quality on his video is 1440p, and he has around 18 to 21 latency, which means he's on a server very close to his house, or something in the general vicinity. The next thing is he's playing with two very good players. If you don't know, Benny Central and Jaff down at the bottom left are two massive creators, or at least Benny Central. I actually don't know Jaff personally, but I know that Jaff is a very good player, and he always plays with Tactical Brit and some of the other guys in the UK, but Benny Central makes a ton of content teaching people how to get better. So just to prove that these are really good players, that's who you're looking at, and Tactical Brit has actually gone to the World Series of Warzone in the past.
Much like most video games, or pretty much any game that has a competitive edge to it, what plays out in casual versus what plays out in ranked tend to be two vastly separate experiences. People in casual tend to mess around with a few more things and play with things that are less restricted, like sniper rifles. People in ranked min-max absolutely everything.
And another thing to note is that in casual gameplay, the skill in skill-based matchmaking is a little bit more loose. However, when you're playing in ranked, they try and lock you into these very specific categories. The only issue is, to ensure that you can get into these categories, they also let in other people, because otherwise the lobbies wouldn't fill. So it's kind of a little messed up right now, because not a lot of people can play ranked because they need a specific amount of wins, and frankly, not a lot of people win in Warzone. But I just wanted to let you know kind of what's going on. I would also know, under my camera, you can kind of see he has around, I wonder if I can zoom in actually here. He has around, nope, that's the wrong side. Hold on. He has around -53 SR, which means he's pretty high up there whenever it comes to basically the amount of people or that he's gone in and eliminated for his W's. He's getting a lot of eliminations. He's getting a lot of wins, and he's working his way up the rank. So he's nearing the top end of these ranks. So this really is a top 1% lobby.
In this video today, I'm going to be telling you guys about all of the big shifts that you're going to see in these utterly unreal lobbies. If you find these sorts of deep dives interesting, please drop a like on this and consider becoming a sub. It does support the channel, and we're on the road to 200k. The first major difference you're going to notice with...
By the way, I have subscribed to the Tactical Brit before. This is just a different account. All right, don't judge me.
Ranked is the entire tempo of this plays at an entirely different speed. Almost all of the top teams and players are immediately landing on a buy station and picking up 2 weapons for $500 each as a result of an existing bug. And as I'll mention later on in this,
which I will note has already been patched.
This video, min-maxing everything, even if it's broken, is just the reality of ranked play. So landing on guns almost instantaneously, hitting out a contract, and then starting to rotate onto other teams has become a huge part of this game. And if you fall behind in tempo because you didn't get your weapons fast enough, you didn't get your loadout quickly enough, or you didn't start popping UAVs to start taking on other teams, you will find yourself very far down in the pack. And within a matter of moments, you can go from being in a really good spot to a really bad spot, and teams are going to cycle on top of you. Regains in this situation and trying to get people back into the game itself are going to put you in a tricky spot, because most intelligent teams will also play around buy stations, and staying ahead of the tempo is a really big thing. Having all 3 of you alive and playing deep into the circles to get that really critically important late game SR for placement becomes so massive in this. So tempo...
Now, I kind of want to put this on pause here, because what he's talking about, tempo, is one thing that you may have heard content creators talk about in the past, or people like Iceman Isaac or Benny Central, or even myself. We talk about keeping that tempo. A lot of the times you're going to see these little YY demons over on Rebirth, and they'll slam the triangle button or the Y button, depending on what platform they're on, and they'll be switching their weapons all the time. Now, they're doing it because they're gross little losers, but if you look at pros in Call of Duty, sometimes they'll be pressing that button, and the way that they do that is that's to keep the tempo, keep the rhythm, keep their hands warm, keep them going in the right kind of pace that they need to be going to ensure that they're getting the eliminations the way that they need to get them, and making sure that they're always locked in. Now, when he's talking about tempo here, it's a little bit different. The tempo that he's talking about is maneuvering around the map, making sure that you have the right weapons at the right time, making sure that you're grabbing contracts when you need to grab contracts, and things of that nature, because when you're playing against the best players, they're always going to be 2 steps ahead of you because they're thinking 2 steps ahead of you. Now, a lot of people are going to get upset and they're going to say, hey, they're probably all cheating. The issue is when you listen to somebody like Tactical Brit, you can hear that there's a lot of thought that goes into things. So if you want to say someone's cheating, whatever, but you also have to go in and think about the amount of thought that they're putting into the game outside of it. If someone can explain to you step by step why they did the things that they did and the exact reasoning behind it, then you can almost guarantee that they're just an incredibly smart player. The issue is that a lot of people don't explain it. Now, a lot of people aren't asked, instead they're just accused. So hopefully we'll see kind of a shift in the future of that. Hopefully we get some kind of working anti-cheat. But I think that tempo is one of those things that really showcases the skill of a higher tier player.
Is stage 1. If you fall behind in tempo, you're not getting any gains. If you get ahead of the tempo, you're going to do really, really well. The next big difference you'll notice in these top 1% lobbies is how larger contextual awareness starts coming into the fray. Thinking about things like if you're on a UAV consistently, thinking about things like if you see a 3-man stack and are they heading in your direction.
Now, on the topic of UAV, another thing that I like to kind of point out every time that there is a UAV is like, hey, we've got a UAV, most likely they're around a specific buy station, because often people will hit a buy station and instantly pop that UAV, then hold another one. Now, I will say, obviously, you could be on that second one. You could be on the one where they pop it a little bit later. However, most likely, you're on the one where someone has popped a UAV from a buy station. So if you keep that in mind, you can kind of narrow down based on the knowledge that UAVs only go like 250 meters in diameter, I believe, or 250, I think it's diameter. I don't think it's radius, but it goes only a specific distance. So if you keep that in mind, you can kind of narrow down where people are if you're on UAV. So it's kind of like a reverse UAV, which is very interesting to think about. And it's something that we've been doing since Verdansk to allow us to just continuously improve and know where people are. And instead of having to get our own UAV, if you heard enemy UAV overhead, you could be like, all right, where are they? Kind of situation like that.
Or even if you're on a regain, thinking about the activity in the area. Have you seen tracers? Have you seen players? Has a contract recently been popped in that location? Every little hint and detail that you can pick up on that might allude to the presence of players can be a hugely important thing. The vast majority of people have started running ghost and suppressors almost instantly because it became very obvious early on that appearing on the radar as a red dot was getting people third-partied even faster.
And to kind of talk on that subject specifically, where people are really focusing down on making sure that they have ghost and cold-blooded and stuff like that, that's not something that really matters all that much in public lobbies. I don't know how many of you have really noticed that, but if you're in kind of a public lobby, it's less likely that you need that because a ton of people aren't getting UAVs. The matchmaking is a little looser in public. I mean, that's just the reality of things. Like, don't get me wrong, it is somewhat strict. You are going to often like play against harder players and things of that nature, but the likelihood of that is much less because of the amount of players that go into it. And there's 120 players that are in a single match anyway. So there's more of an option to have different kind of players in the game. Now, personally, I don't even run Ghost. I'm one of those people where in most scenarios, I trust, at least in a public match, that my gun skill is going to be so good that I can outgun anybody. Not to say that I have the ego to assume that I will win every gunfight, but you have to trust your skill enough to actually be able to do that. But when you're playing in these ranked lobbies, kind of like, imagine you're going into a tournament, right? You know for a fact that the players you're playing against are much better than the average Joe. So you have to play it a little bit more passive. You have to think more about every step of the way. You have to think about the specific perks, the specific weapons, the exact way that you're grabbing your guns, how you reach all these places, like with rotations, all the positioning that you're putting yourself into. These are all things that you have to think about when you're playing in something like this. But if you ever watch like content creators, obviously some people are two boxing and, you know, getting around certain things like that. But most of the time, you don't even have to do that. If you watch my videos, I want to be very clear. I do not two-box. I do not VPN. But you're going to see times where some people are just clueless. Because of that, I can assume that most people are going to kind of be playing like that in public lobbies. Especially when I play, which is like 9 a.m. in the morning, when there's just not many sweats on. If you watch my videos and it's recorded at night, you can usually tell a big difference in the player base. But my point here, all in all, is that you have to think a lot more whenever you're going in versus the bad players, right? If you're going against bad players, you don't have to think much at all. You don't have to worry about whether or not you're on, you know, UAVs or stuff like that, because somebody's going to pop a UAV, but they're not going to be good enough to eliminate you anyway, and you can kind of reverse engineer that UAV, so you don't have to have Ghost. But when you're playing in these high tier lobbies, it's the exact opposite. You have to think about every little detail, and if you miss a detail, if you make the most minute mistake, you lose. And that's why whenever you see people going to these tournaments, and this isn't anybody like any creator that's going to a tournament and losing or winning, you may see that certain players will capitalize on the mistakes of others more, and somebody that you expected to win the tournament actually loses just outright. Now, obviously, we have Biffle's team that wins everything, so disregard Biffle's team. But everybody else kind of falls into that category, basically.
Because even when you're playing ranked play perfectly, you're getting the right positions, all three of you are venturing in as a stack into different gunfights, and you're just generally playing quite well, you will still find things in this competitive format that are going to put you down.
I'm sorry to pause it again, but he said, notice what he said there. And I'll go back to it.
You will still find things in this.
I won't go back to it. Hold on. We got to go back to like right here.
Into different gunfights.
Going into a stack is what he said, basically. Here we go. Here we go.
When you're playing ranked play perfectly, you're getting the right positions. All three of you are venturing in as a stack.
All three of you are venturing in as a stack. Now, this is something that has been very controversial among the community. People are just so tired of having to deal with players stacking. But the reality is, that is the best thing that you can do if you're playing as a team, which, hear me out, is the point of a team-based game. Isn't that crazy? It's annoying to get eliminated when you're solo and you're pushing against a stack, or a bunch of players shoot you all at the same time. But even in the clip that he just showed right here, it's three of them and one dude with TikTok in his name. Like, literally, watch.
You're getting the right positions. All three of you are venturing.
Like, if you look under my camera here, you can see we've got him right here, we've got Jaff, and we've got Benny Central, and they all start shooting at this guy. Now, Tactical Brit was the closest to the guy, but the guy, of course, that he eliminates is like XX Demon Slayer XX. Like, it's just so obvious that some people are so focused on their own ego that they're not focused on basically trying to play as a team, help the team get wins and stuff like that. But I will always say this. I'll always communicate this anytime I make a tip video. And by the way, I'm going to be launching my XPEL Warzone Bootcamp channel very, very soon. I have some videos over there right now. So if you really want to, go and get some tips, it's just on the last version of Urzikstan. So you're not going to learn as much as you possibly could, but it's still there to learn. But anytime I hop in and I'm trying to communicate like, hey, this is what you need to do for team-based modes, I will always say, stick with your team. It is the most important thing, is to stick with your team. Always buy your teammates back. Always prioritize revives, stuff like that, because having one more player against another player that's solo is so very important, and people underestimate that, or people want to have the ability to have their teammates watch them when they're dead. Like, we have to get past our own ego if we want to get more wins, if we want to have a good time, and that's the best way to do it, is to pull your teammates in and let them get the assist or let them get the kill. It just doesn't matter.
In as a stack into different gunfights, and you're just generally playing quite well, you will still find things in this competitive format that are going to put you down. Third parties, people using utilities, people using streaks, all of that can very much get on top of you And
these are all variables. I think the big thing about Battle Royale, specifically Warzone, is that there's so many variables that you have to think about that's what makes the competitive side very fun and very intriguing.
Quickly. And as a result of that, you start accounting for things that you wouldn't even account for, like putting a protection system down in the second floor, min-maxing your utilities so that you can get the most out of a building position.
And actually, speaking of his utility, of course he pulls up his map, but speaking of his utilities, if you look at the bottom right, they actually are running these little bomb things. I can't think of the name of them, but what they do is you throw them down, and I actually have to pull this up, but if you look, you can see this right here, right? Those things, if you throw them there down on the ground, they have a 0.75 second timer, which means if you throw it down and somebody runs over it, they have 0.75 of a second, 3/4 of a second to get out of that and live. The thing is a lot of people don't think that fast. And you can actually throw down 3 of them now, so that you toss down 2 on one stack, they blow it up, and then around the corner you toss another, and they're not expecting it. Things like that, what he's talking about, where you're like min-maxing equipment and things of that nature, it's so important. And when you get to those final circles, which we're probably going to see with him, he's probably going to throw down like a few of these little bombs, and people are going to run over it and probably die. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, because some people might be running like blast or whatever it's called, the blast vest. I can't think, but bombardier or bomb squad. That's, I played this game. I swear to God, I played this game. They just changed everything. I'm sorry, I haven't done a tip video in a while. But the point is, a lot of people might be running that, and that could actually change the way that people run up on these equipment.
So that you can get the most out of a building position. Players have very quickly clocked on that in this game, larger context is everything. Are there people on your VSAT? Are there people not on your VSAT? Can you make a good rotation? Is it worth you playing the edge of the zone because the circle's looking horrendous, or taking... I'm sorry, I know, but I'm also going to point out, if you look at his minimap right here, you see a bunch of people right here. What they've done is they've popped 3 UAVs in a row because there was a fire sale. What that allows them to do is focus on positioning, because when you know where every player on the map is, which is what an advanced UAV does, he just called it a VSAT. But if you know where every player is, you can position yourself just a little bit better than everyone else and know where you should be so that you can outplay them. It's not necessarily going for as many eliminations as you possibly can. Sometimes it's just about positioning. Sometimes it's just about those rotations. And I respect the hell out of him for kind of trying to explain that here by saying, focusing on that VSAT, that advanced UAV. Picking up a power position and risking being pushed. There is so many little micro decisions that go into the overall context of what's going on that the top teams in the world and the guys who are going to hit T250, Iridescent and beyond are having these conversations in real time. They're talking about, hey, that bounty contract just got taken a few meters ahead of us, so there's definitely someone there. Or they're doing regains on the basis of visual information that they've seen.
What I'll say separates most players from the top players is the speed at which decisions can be made. That is the one thing that I constantly talk about. For me, I know that I have a somewhat like kind of photographic memory. So whenever I engage a gunfight, I memorize where the player's at so that I can kind of line up my shot beforehand and shoot at him, right? That's one thing that's like my advantage. A lot of people have that exact same thing. But another thing is I think very quickly when I'm in the moment. If you ever watch my videos, I'm always the IGL because I kind of understand where like things are going to go and how things are going to rotate. And it's just like something in my head. But another thing is that my hands don't work the same way that my brain does. So my brain might be fast, but my hands are a little slow. So I don't have the exact skill that I would need on dexterity than, you know, somebody else that's actually a pro. And somebody else might be like that. A lot of you might be like that, where you think it out and you understand what you need to do, but sometimes your hands just don't really help you with that. Obviously, a lot of this comes with practice. A lot of it comes with putting in those 8 hours a day, just focusing on the highest skill lobbies, focusing on maybe jumping in and trying to do some multiplayer things. But what he's saying here, where people are having these conversations in real time, these teams of people that are always at the top, the reason they're good is that they just communicate things, they watch footage over, and they do it all very quickly. And everybody just has this link where they understand what the other one's talking about so that they can say something fast. No one's going to get offended, be like, no, don't do that. People just agree. You just accept it. I'm not going to do that. My teammate said I shouldn't do it. I trust them. So it's trust, it's thinking quickly, it's communication, it's so many different things. And I love hearing about these things from other creators.
Going to see a lot of this stuff play out in really fast windows in ways that you probably won't see in any kind of pubs game. People in pubs games, generally speaking, are just moving around and looking for some sort of fight here and there. Now,
I do want to point out right here, did you see the speed at which, you know, his teammates kind of both ended up in a tough situation? Really Jaff went down, and then Benny, he's got other people over here that he's having to fight a little bit, right? or actually Jaff's up top. Benny's trying to get up. It looks like Benny starts maybe taking the ladder here.
Kind of pubs game. People in pubs games generally.
I think he may have started taking the ladder right there, and he got knocked off the ladder. Now, I will say there's currently a glitch with the ladder where if you get halfway up, it'll just pull your chute when you try and jump off. So that could have been what it is. But the speed at which he started focusing on his teammates when he knew that Benny couldn't get the res was very respectable.
Looking for some sort of fight here and there. But in a full-blown ranked game, you are seeing full decision making coming out with people moving building to building, people moving cover to cover, people being aware of contracts, people being aware of UAVs, streaks, and everything that could affect the overall outcome of getting from A to B. It all comes into the game. The next thing is meta min-maxing. This is definitely something that you're seeing a lot of in ranked play very early on, and it definitely exposes some of the weaknesses that we've seen in Warzone in terms of balancing.
Going back just a little bit, what I want to look at here is the way that he revived his teammate. If you look, he's got Survivor, and the speed at which the revive happens is Benny also has Survivor. So this is where like really focusing on those perks is such a big deal. You can see that Benny is getting up much faster. The first thing he did was he blocked off that doorway. He got shots on this guy because he knew that that guy was going to push. You saw it on the minimap a minute ago. But he tosses these little blast traps and then immediately goes for the res. He doesn't waste any time. He doesn't do anything like that. He sees a molly hits the right. He's watching his health on the bottom left here to make sure that that molly is not actually hurting him so much that it's going to kill him. But instead, he just full sends that revive on Benny. And again, this is one of those things that a lot of regular players would have been terrified to do. But in the Tactical Brits place, like he did a very good job, and he ensured that he was actually just getting that res and not focusing on what was going on around him. He just went for it because either he gets it or he doesn't in this case.
Something that you're seeing a lot of in ranked play very early on, and it definitely exposes some of the weaknesses that we've seen in Warzone in terms of balancing. Throughout the first couple of days, we are seeing a meta of 100 round XM4s, which in my opinion, all need to be banned. Anything that gives ARs a magazine capacity of over 60 rounds just means that you've got 3 players with 300 bullets without having to reload. You could shoot players through buildings because they're all made out of paper mache.
To be fair, the buildings are actually not the issue. The issue is that Black Ops 6 weapons have a natural FMJ. Now, there's obviously things like under my camera here that you can see. This is always going to be shootable, but the wall beside it should not be shootable. You should not be able to shoot through the wall beside the cardboard or the wood paneling or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's two very different materials, and it always has been in Call of Duty, and then you'd usually have to put on FMJ to allow yourself to shoot through these buildings. The issue with Black Ops 6 weapons right now is that they're all perfectly fine to shoot through buildings. I think some weapons obviously have the ability to shoot through them better, like the RAL MG and stuff like that can definitely shoot through buildings without having FMJ. But in the case of the current meta, a lot of these Black Ops 6 weapons are just a little bit busted, and that's why people are focused on the Black Ops 6 meta. And it's also obviously a great thing where they want you to use them. I think
having more than extended mag 2, anything above a 60 round magazine for an AR is a massively, massively unbalanced thing. And hopefully we see that change soon. But that's just the basis of the weapons. The biggest meta min-maxing you're seeing is actually the extra layer on top of that. The vast majority of teams are running a battle-ready loadout so that they can use fire sales, or that they can buy loadouts themselves to get a VSAT on any given occasion. And most teams who are reaching into top 250 in Crimson and Iridescent are popping possibly 2 to 3 VSATs a game, not only to inform them of free kills and 3v2s and 3v1s that they can capitalize on, but also to give them the big advance of information when making late game rotations.
Now, from my understanding, the battle-ready loadout, when he says that, he's talking about a wild card that they can set up on their class. And I think, if I'm not wrong, it gives you a UAV out of the loadout and maybe like some cash. I'm not 100%. I know that it gives you a UAV, but I'm not 100% on the other like good stuff that comes out of it. But I will note what he's saying here is that if everybody uses the battle ready loadout and they're buying their guns off rip, then what they can do is just get that free UAV, they get that free VSAT, and then they figure out where all the players are, like we were mentioning earlier, so that they can do their rotations and get more eliminations and get more SR overall.
Of landing on a buy station and picking up an 8 attachment weapon for $500, the current meta of getting VSATs off of battle-ready classes, and also the current meta of utilizing different utilities is what's separating people out between the ranks. Good teams and top teams are very quickly getting on board with the idea of calling in VSATs and regaining ammunition and plates as much as humanly possible so that they're always in a prime position to take a fight. And many of them are just exploiting numbers advantages. It makes sense to take on a 3v2 because as long as all of you are there to trade out the kills, there's a good chance that nobody will get fooled in that equation. Whereas
and again, that's 100% true, but you have to make sure that you have a good set of teammates. What he said was that if there's 3 of you and 2 of them, you can take the gunfight because there's a good chance that they won't fool one of your teammates, right? Yes, but you always have to make sure that you have the proper trades, because if you're not pushing in with your team and it's a 3 versus 2, but not everybody's on the same page, then you end up losing that gunfight. And again, this is what will separate the good players from the bad players, is whether or not they properly play as a team, or if some guy has an ego bigger than his teammates and he thinks that he's better than everybody else and he'll push things by himself, and then he loses the game for the team, you lose SR, and it's just poor mistakes. Everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has to have the same kind of trust in each other, and we have to make those decisions quickly to where everybody's moving very, very fast. If you have one person, one singular person on your team that decides to not do the exact thing at the exact time that you need, that is a loss right there. It is all about trust. It is all about communication. It is all about being on the same page and just doing what you need to do. And that, again, is what will separate good players from bad players.
3v3 from position to position only makes sense if you manage to get one of the entry picks or take out an opponent very early on.
And that is usually why you have in pubs something like snipers. But in this, snipers are no longer a one-shot elimination. So you kind of have to call out like, hey, I've got a sniper. Let's 3-2-1 these guys. So when people say that, what you'll do is you'll pull out that sniper and it'll be 3, 2, 1, and the sniper's going to shoot, and then you're going to have another assault rifle guy that's going to also shoot. But if you're running a sniper in these kind of games, what you'll end up having to do, which no one's going to be running a sniper in this. If they are, they're like a goofball, an absolute goofball. But what you end up having to do is kind of having that secondary weapon that's able to take on those mid-range gunfights, right? You want to be able to shoot people at around 40 meters with an SMG. So you have to pick out an SMG like the Jackal that shoots very long distances and still holds quite a bit of damage.
The last part of this equation with meta min-maxing for me, and something we've definitely not seen a huge amount of in public games, is the use of different utilities. It is starting to become quite apparent that things like shock sticks, blast traps, spring mines, even things like the gas grenades that are available to...
Oh, wait. Look. If you look at the top,
things
right
like
here.
Shock sticks, blast traps, spring mines, even things like...
All right, there it is. So if this doesn't show, I mean, like, people are still getting ricocheted. And you know what? This is kind of a weird topic, but if you don't know, shadow bans are purely based on reports, which means this guy right here, obviously people reported enough to get him shadow banned. But the issue is we still don't know if this guy's like actually cheating. That's kind of the big problem, is that we don't know if this guy's actually cheating, which really sucks. And I don't like that it says ricochet right here, because it's not ricochet. It was voted to kick, realistically. So I'm not saying this guy wasn't cheating, but I also can't confirm that this guy was cheating. And that's kind of the issue with them putting ricochet on the side. I think that's massively misleading. And I hate that they put ricochet, because I've actually seen my teammates get shadow banned and come back a week later and it says ricochet on the side. I had it happen to my friend Pipe, who, let me tell you, is absolutely, positively, in no capacity cheating. This guy, once in a blue moon, drops more eliminations than me. And I can tell you point blank, I'm definitely not cheating, because you can listen to the way that I understand these games, right? And if you watch the way that I play, you know that I miss quite a few shots, all right? My stuff is all about being smart and taking specific positionings and stuff like that. But you'll watch that I kind of just suck whenever it comes to my hands and stuff like that. I'll say it all the time. But again, the big issue is that I don't like that they're kind of just bold-faced lying and saying, this guy was ricocheted. We caught him cheating. No, you didn't. You just had some stupid system that allows random players to report people and get them out of there for a week. It makes no sense. Sorry, I didn't want to... Okay.
The gas grenades that are available to you are starting to take more of a place in the game. I have regularly been using these shock sticks and trap mines just because it stops the team advancing a push if we have 1 or 2 players downed, and it has been...
And I will note, I really hate their positioning here. right? You've got one over on the I wonder if I can zoom in on the mini map. But you've got, God, he has his mini map in such a weird place. He's got one right here, and one right here. They're way too split for something like this, and this is not something that I would recommend to the regular player.
2 players downed, and it has been working incredibly successfully. And I've generally been noticing more teams, especially in the top brackets, starting to shy away from having a team composition where everybody's running stim, smokes, and nades, and some people are starting to think about setup utility. Because in a 3v3 gunfight, if a team decides to push your building, the difference between you guys getting a full wipe and maybe losing that fight can be as much as a single piece of damage. So things like spring mines, blast.
Holy crap, the speed at which he got freaking fried by this plasma guy is insane. And notice, if you look at that minimap, you can see there's like little lines on Benny's, it's really hard to see, I know, you'd have to zoom in, but there's little lines on Benny Central's arrow that show that he's shooting back. So the second that Tactical Brit got shot, Benny started shooting back. And that's another thing that will separate good players from bad players, because usually I would just die. My teammates don't shoot back. Ironically, he died anyway.
To have a bit more of an abundant effect on the game, and something that I personally feel not only acts as an early warning system to let you know somebody might be nearby and is probably trying to push you, but also acts as a full-blown offensive counter in the game. So you're seeing a lot of that min-maxing coming in very quickly. The next big thing that's starting to evolve in the top 1% of lobbies, which obviously is something that you would just assume would be the case anyway, is just pure team play dynamics. You have 3 people communicating at a highly intricate level. It's very rarely people squad filling.
I'm not going to pause this section anymore because I want you to listen. I'm telling you that, like, I have not watched this video beforehand. Listen to what I said. Like, go back and listen to what I said if you want, but listen to what he says in comparison to what I said.
I would assume pretty much everybody playing from pretty much Diamond onwards, or even Platinum onwards, is a full-blown 3-stack that has match made as a group, which means you're going to have that heightened communication level, you're not going to have any disconnects with different people, and also quite possibly people they are familiar with. Most squads in the top 250 and most squads breaching into Iridescent are playing with the same people quite frequently and getting a feel for their playstyles and getting a feel for how that plans out. And that,
or they're cheating. Obviously, we still have a big cheater problem.
Can make or break a team. You know, the difference between you being 1 second behind or 1 second ahead on a gunfight might just be how well you know the person you're playing with. And that means that the game has a larger level of depth to it too. It means you're going to have people who are communicating every push, communicating every fight, trading out kills with each other and getting their teammates ready for said trades, as opposed to some of the stuff you see in public games. Without a doubt, pretty much every team I've ran into has been well organized and well communicated, and even if they lose a fight, they do it in a very challenging fashion. And you're seeing this pretty early on, and I'm really glad we're seeing it in ranked play and seeing better cohesiveness. In the previous iterations of ranked, it was honestly fairly easy to get into Crimson and Iridescent without a huge amount of work, and SR gains were pretty much dead easy. In this iteration of ranked, I think we're seeing a much more punishing structure that is actually making team play so much more important. And I'm actually glad that is the case. I've often felt like ranked in the past has simply been a case of who plays more, and whilst there is still an element of people grinding in the hours, it definitely does feel as though teams who work well together and make those big SR gains are ultimately more important than the amount of hours that they put in.
Now, the most like I ever played ranked was back in Warzone 2. I played Big Map ranked, and it's because I had a lot of fun with it. I used to make different kinds of videos back in the day for my main channel, and so because of that, I was able to play ranked quite a bit, and I would play with different teams. And the issue is, like he's saying, when you play with different teams, you really don't have that same cohesiveness. So what he's talking about here is saying if you want to reach those high tiers, you have to have like a mainstay team. I love hearing that because that's really like, I kind of love the idea of Call of Duty kind of building our relationships with specific people. I love the idea of people getting very good at communication because of that. It's like when you're in a relationship. I mean, the more that you like work on it, the better you're going to be at it. And communication's a big deal. So if you're in a relationship with your SO and like you're not sitting there like communicating properly, well, things aren't going to work out. I mean, this is a life lesson, if anything.
The final biggest thing that I'm noticing in these top 1% lobbies is the importance of the first down. Now, we have played some very, very talented team, World Series players, LAN players, players who I'm very familiar with in the scene. And the importance of that first pick cannot be overstated enough. The second your team ends up going from a 3v3 to a 2v3, that team is going to play the numbers advantage every single time because there are very few things that will counter or provide the sufficient amount of damage to stop that push from occurring. So once you start breaching into these top lobbies, the idea of getting picked first because you took too long peeking something, or you get team shot by teams who are doing a 3-2-1 countdown and firing their guns at the same time at you, can actually have a really massive impact on.
Did you hear him? He said the 3-2-1 thing that I mentioned earlier. I'm telling you, like everybody that plays at a high tier has these same thoughts, and it's such a big differentiator between the low and high tier players.
The overall outcome of your game. Now, granted, there are some issues with ranked, and we will touch on those, but for the most part, this is a universal truth. The importance of the first down cannot be overstated, and in many scenarios, you are better off sacrificing, missing out on a kill or two to make sure that you're not.
And by the way, that's called trigger discipline. What he's talking about, where you're like not taking a shot at the enemy or something like that, and you don't shoot at them, but eventually you'll end up getting the elimination because you let them make the mistake.
The person who is giving somebody an entry frag and giving somebody the ability to push. That should give you guys a bit of an insight into what the top 1% of these lobbies look like. And generally speaking, I think it's also given an insight into the wider issues that exist with rank, because it certainly isn't perfect. First and foremost, not a fan of Battle Ready being an existing thing in the game.
Yeah.
I'm also not a fan of the Bandolier one being a thing either, because we're basically giving people multiple grenades, 4 grenades with Bandolier, and we're giving people...
Bandolier is way broken. I actually personally set up my classes to all have, like, I have an overkill and a Bandolier. Overkill, Bandolier. Overkill, Bandolier. And I do that because I need that for equipment. If I'm popping stems or if I'm throwing down these blast traps, I want to ensure that I can have extras, because you can throw down 3 now, but that also means you have 1 extra just in case if you throw down all 3 of your blast traps.
VSATs on any given occasion with Battle Ready. Generally speaking, I still fail to see what wild cards are offering to Call of Duty Warzone that don't just complicate the balancing or make the balancing overly unbalanced in places.
They need to be gone. We don't need 8 attachments. We don't need the extra Bandolier vest we can find in the game. We don't need the Battle Ready to give us the UAV. I think that all of the wild cards need to be gone. They need to be gone. We need, even just give overkill for free. It doesn't make sense.
The next big thing we're seeing is the exploitation of 8 attachment weapons landing on buy stations and picking them up for $500 is a bug that they have tried to fix on about 3 separate occasions and still haven't managed.
They finally fixed it.
Any bug that's in the game or things that are even mildly broken are things that are going to be dealt with and used extremely quickly in a top 1% ranked lobby, and nobody's going to miss out on them. The second it was clear that you could get an 8 attachment weapon for $500, the entire dynamic of these top 1% lobbies changed.
And I will say, the speed at which good players figure these things out and utilize these things, oh my God, it's so different. It is so different. Like if you're in like the higher engagement optimized matchmaking lobbies, like you're often getting into these high skill lobbies, even in public matches, you'll notice there's always people with the meta, like 24/7. Also, I feel like when I'm running the meta, everybody's running the meta. I don't know if I'm crazy on that or if that's some kind of like engagement thing like that they've put in, like you're using this gun, they got to use this gun. I don't know. Just know the difference.
Almost everybody is landing immediately on weapons and taking them, and it's completely shifted how the initial opening couple of minutes of the game should be played. The tempo at the start of these rounds now is exceedingly fast, when it really should be about 40% slower, whilst people slowly get their weapons and money together to pull together resources. Balancing generally is the last thing that's been pretty heavily exposed here. Having 100 round magazines on an XM4 which has 0 recoil basically means that you have 300 bullets of laser beams firing at you on any given occasion, and considering most of the structures in this game seem to be made of paper, it just creates this really awful balancing dynamic. And right now, I would actually say that the XM4 situation is probably worse than the RPK back in Warzone 2, and equally as bad as what we've saw with sniper rifles.
So here's the thing. Aside from all of the problems that he brought up, my question to you today that I kind of want to hear in a comment down below is, let's say you're a 0.8 KD player and disregard eliminations versus death. I'm saying KD, kill versus, death. Let's say you're one of the lower skilled or average skilled players. Does this help you understand the mindset that goes into it? These guys are playing 8-10 hours a day, 6 to 10 hours a day, let's call it that. And they're putting in the work to constantly think about it. Do you feel that there's a massive difference between yourself and this player. Has this in any way enlightened you? And I would like to say, as always, there's a link in the description down below if you want to go to the Tactical Brits and discuss it over there, or if you want to watch his video again without me pausing and annoying the absolute piss out of you. But either way, I appreciate you watching. That's pretty much all I got today. I really like listening to smart people talk about the plays that they make in the game, and I think that's massively helpful for a specific category of players in the community that are interested in learning, interested in getting better, and really want to showcase skills that they've seen by other players. Either way, thank y'all. Make sure that you subscribe and check out my second channel, Expel Plus, for daily loadout videos if you're trying to absolutely dominate your games. Bye. See ya. Have a good bye. Bye.